Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cup of Joe with Joe and Joe podcast. I am your host, Joe, and with me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Joe.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we have another edition here of Storytime with Joe. Joe, if you would spare me maybe 2 minutes of a quick story time.
You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Oh, no. Joe, let me tell you something that happened to me this past week.
He's hijacking the podcast again. Oh, no!
It won't be too long, I swear. So,
okay.
You know, I got a job as a soccer coach, coaching the little kids and all that stuff. And, you know, when you're coaching little kids, they got to make sure you're a good guy. So I got to do all these background checks and stuff like that. And
hide all the drugs.
Yes. And I had to go get my fingerprints.
The porn.
I had to get my fingerprints done. They say there's nothing against hentai. Nothing. It's okay.
What if it's hentai of?
Nope.
Boys.
Okay. So I have to go get my fingerprints done at this place called Identigo, and it's like you have to make it's like a whole nationwide thing. Yes.
Identigo.
Yes. And you have to you have to schedule it online, show up. There's a bunch of locations. So I show up and I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm waiting in line. And this guy calls me back and he's like, Joseph. I'm like, okay, I'll get this done. And so I get back there and he's this younger black dude. He's in like this kind of like button down shirt with a bow tie. These pretty like funky like red glasses. And he asked me for my ID and I hand it to him. And he looks at the ID and he looks at me and he goes, wow, you're more handsome than in person. And I'm like, okay, thanks. I appreciate that. I'm like, that's not too weird, is it? And then he's like asking me all this information and stuff like that. And, you know, it takes a while to do the fingerprint because it's like the computerized. You don't do the ink anymore. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And this guy's talking to me. He's like, so Joe, what do you do for a living? And I also mentioned he's a very flamboyant voice. And I'm like, I'm finishing up my last year of college. He goes, oh, what are you studying? I'm like, biology. He's like, oh,
little boys.
He's like, what are you gonna do after graduation? What's gonna be your job? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to graduate school. He goes, oh, are we gonna have Dr. Joe? And I'm like, oh, well, kind of. I'm like, I'm gonna be a physical therapist. He goes, oh, a therapist. And he's like holding my hands doing this, right? And he's like, you have great hands for a therapist. And I'm like, thank you. Yeah. And so he's talking to me, telling him about how his shoulders are so stressed at the end of the day. And at the end of all this, I'm like, okay, this is a little weird. and this guy, like this guy's like 30s, and he's like 30s, so he's young but not too old. So I have to pay for this. He prints out my receipt, and then
he goes, all right, now we can actually get to the part where you can register. That was my personal computer.
He flips the receipt over and he scribbles something down, folds it up, and hands it to me, and he says,
oh, I knew it.
He goes, this is for when you need somebody to practice on. And I was like, oh, thank you.
Oh my god.
And I walked out and I'm like, where's my car? I'm like, Mom, help me. Stranger danger. And then I open up and it says Reggie. And then his phone number. I was like, oh my god.
I thought it just said Reggie. I was like, where the fuck are you gonna find Reggie?
Joe, I was so scared. And I'm like, is he gonna know I'm gonna throw it out? And I tossed this thing and I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, what the fuck just happened?
Oh my god. That sounds like a fucking nightmare.
It was so weird. It was so weird. He's like, literally just did it so discreetly. Like, I was like, did he just write something on there? And he folds it up, slips it to me. He's like, yeah, so, this is for when you need somebody to practice on. And I'm like, are these innuendos? I think these are innuendos.
What a fucking smooth lad. Holy shit. That's so funny. That's so good.
Yeah, it was, should I be flattered? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, be flattered. I God. This is stuff that, like, you hear about in, like, a sitcom, and you're like, oh, yeah, this is sitcom life, and this is, now it's like it's real life. That's so, oh, my God.
Oh, man. I'll always think
I mean,
about
I
you,
applaud
Reggie.
him. I'll never forget you, Reggie. It might not be exactly why you think, but, you know.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
God bless. I'm dedicating this podcast to Reggie. God bless you, Reggie. That was a wonderful story. What the fuck are we talking about?
Comic
Comics?
books. It's basically the
Comic
same
books.
thing.
Yeah. There's a Reggie and Watchmen, so, you know, it's tangentially related.
Good.
Yeah, so we both read two comics this week. They're in the thumbnail. You can look at both their faces. We got Red X and we got Batman. I'm going to talk about neither of them right now because I'm going to wax poetically about two other issues real briefly. And when I say real briefly, I mean real fucking briefly. Because there's not a whole lot to say about these things. They're just shit that I enjoy reading that I'm just going to give a little bit of time to. So, clearing the throat. All is good. So wait, let me take a swig of water real quick. Okay, Joe, if you would, shut the fuck up for a second. I'm going to talk about Once and Future, number 18, and Miles Morales Spider-Man, numero 25. So, real briefly, Joe, I said shut the fuck up, would you? Thank you. Once and Future number 18. It's just more Once and Future, as stated last week, where I was like, hey, it's Arthurian legend, but it's taking place in modern day, and there's an old grandma, but she's like fucking John Wick as a grandma, and it's really cool. It's still that. It's got awesome Dan Moore art. There's a fucking dragon, and there's like King Arthur, but he's like a weird zombie guy. Like, it looks like the Black Cauldron sort of shit, because it's all like the bones and like crowns, and it's like, oh my god, this is so cool. So that is really cool. It just ended the third arc. So this is issue 18. So it's 6 issues per arc. I'm not going to fucking go ahead with whatever. But at the end of this one, it was the writer and the artist, and they were just like, hey, cool, thank you for buying this. Also, it'll be a couple more months before the next one is out. So obviously, you know, I'm assuming because Dan Mora was off doing Future State and then some Detective Comics artwork stuff, they were just like, all right, we're going to have to take a break on this for a little bit, and now we're going to start building up the back catalog and all that sort of stuff. But if anyone is interested in that, again, issue 18 just came out. It wraps up the third arc, so 3 arcs in total so far. If you want to go out and check that out, cool stuff. Moving swiftly on to Miles Morales Spider-Man, number 25, beginning of the Clone Saga. So, this opens up, and we have Miles Morales at home. In the previous issue, it was just like, oh, hey, there's a Spider-Man going around dressed as Miles Morales that's doing some bad stuff. And he's like, what? That isn't me. And so he goes home, and he's talking to his parents about it, and then Genki comes in. And Genki's all like, hey, Miles, I have something I need to tell you. And it's like, and Miles is all like, oh, is it the Clone Spider-Man stuff? And he's like, wait a minute. I mean, he doesn't know it's clone stuff. Yeah, I'm saying that. He's like, is it the Spider guy dressed like me? And he's like, oh, actually, that takes precedence over this. So they hang out in the room. They find out some stuff like, oh, okay, this is probably where he's going to hit next. So as he's going to leave, Miles sees his phone, and he picks up the phone, and it's like, oh, no, there's this girl texting him that Miles used to date. And he's like, yeah, buddy, that's what I want to talk to you about. I'm kind of going out with your ex. And he, like, in a very uncharacteristic way, like, slams Genki up against the desk, and he's all just like, well, you're dating my ex girl. Why are you doing this? How can you do this to me? And he's like, dude, get your hands off. He literally says, dude, get your hands off me. And Miles is like, has a realization. He's like, oh shit, what have I done? And so he like runs away to go deal with the other thing, which I was like, that's weird. I guess he's really stressed out right now, but whatever. He has a little tuffle with Peter Parker Spider-Man, who thinks that he's the bad guy because they wear the same fucking outfit, the clone bad guy, and then Miles Morales. And he's like, no, dude, it's me, I swear to God. And he does something to prove it's him, and he's like, okay, cool. And so the two of them go off, and they're trying to chase down one of the clones. And then other Peter gets taken out of action, and then Miles is all alone, and then he realizes it's not just one clone. There's 3. There's 3 clones. And one is like a weird goopy Venom-looking thing. Another looks like regular Miles, and he's called Salim, and he's got these weird blade things. And another one looks like an anthropomorphic spider person, and it kind of terrifies me existentially. But that's where that issue ends off. It's just a reveal of like 3 different Miles clones, and I'm just like, coming out strong, a lot of clones, all right. But yeah, and that's all I'm going to say about those 2 things.
Both sound Pretty cool. Specifically the Miles one. That seems interesting, doing 3 clones.
I mean, it makes sense considering that the Clone Saga in theory, like the '90s, where there's a lot of clones. There was like Ben Riley, and then there was Kane. I think there was another one at some point. I mean, there was probably a few more at other points, but a lot of it's just like right out the gate. They're like, okay, 3 clones, here you go. So it's not like over the course of 20 issues you're revealing clone and clone and clone and clone. At least not yet, but whatever. So those are the 2 things that I read that I've been enjoying. So now we can hop into Teen Titans Academy Numero Dos.
Oh boy, I can't get enough Red X, man. I mean, Joe, do I need to get a Red X tattoo eventually?
That's up to you, man.
I think it's in the works. Let's make it happen. Moving on to the same thing. So we got Teen Titans Academy number 2, and we get a lot in this in this book.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff. So the color, first off, the cover, Joe, I actually really like this cover. Specifically, the colors of the light blues and the oranges. Ooh.
Complementary colors, baby. All about that color science.
Yes. So, story starts off with, I'm forgetting her name, but she is the paraplegic Flash. She's got the blades. Yeah, Atlita or Alita?
It's Alinta.
Alinta. Okay.
Her speedster name becomes Bolt, I think.
Yes, and she's in a wheelchair and she's going somewhere, and this dude chases her down. You find out quickly it's Red X, and I gotta say, X looks awesome. Really good in this issue. I mean, he looked good in the other ones, but for some reason, when I turned the second page and I saw him, I was like, damn, he looks good.
I think it's because it's the first time we're getting like a full suited in action. I smacked the fucking table again. Full suited in action, a Red X, and it's like a full spread page. So it's like you're getting maximum Red X.
Yes. So we see that, and he takes her out, and she's like, "What are you gonna do? Kill me?" He's like, "Shut up!" And he throws his X's, and you're like, "Oh, what happened?" And then we get back.
Let's go back.
I believe that's called in media res. Is that correct?
In medias res. Yes.
Okay. And we then go back, and all of the recruits are in what is it? Physical education, phys ed. Cyborg's running that.
It's like their gym class sort of thing, but for superpower people.
Yeah, and they're doing this, and we find out that one of the people, Matt Price, he's a bit of a prick, I would say. And he's like, and Cyborg's like, "Hey man, what are you doing? Like, shouldn't you be exercising?" He goes, "There's no need. I have mastered everything. I must only grow my mind, and I've already mastered chess. So now I'm playing this weird, edgy version of chess." And I'm like, "Wow, I didn't know you could make chess even edgier. Holy shit!" And you find out that he fell from the sky onto a boat. He has no memory. He just took his name from I forget where a poem.
A poem or a story?
Yeah. And he has no clue of his backstory is, but he has apparently we don't really know, they don't show what his powers are, but apparently he has really strong powers.
Yeah.
And we're kind of like, okay, this dude's a little edgy, a little bit of an outsider. Wonder what's going on with him. And then we cut to some, the morning after of some superhero sex between Dick and Starfire, and they, yeah, they definitely. I would pay, but we're not gonna get into that. And then we find out Starfire's like, "Oh, so you gonna go see that Barbara bitch, ain't you?"
Oh no, trouble in paradise.
Oh
Joe.
yeah, Dick's trying to. Dick is well, you already know his name. And then we find out that other stuff is going on with the students, where they're like, "Hey, like I want to change roommates and stuff. I don't want to room with this guy," and they're trying to get. Basically, they're trying to not room somebody's Stitch. Is it Stitch that's not trying to room with Matt?
Yeah, Stitch is rooming with Matt right now, and he's trying to get Tubi to switch roommates with him because Stitch really doesn't like. He's creepy, man. He just sits in the room all day playing not chess, and it's weird.
Yeah.
and I'm a fucking rag man.
Yes, yes. And then we cut back to they're in what is it? Are they doing Fizz? No, they're in home ec, and
It's home ec, yeah.
this was a very funny couple of panels of Beast Boy just transforming, and they're trying to control him and take him down. And Nightwing and Cyborg are talking about how they're concerned about. Nightwing's concerned about the mask being missing, and Cyborg's concerned about Matt. Matt shows up and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go do this, or I'm gonna go to the library." And Cyborg's like, "Okay, yeah, you can go." And then Alita shows up. She's like, "Hey, I forgot my blades. Can I go grab them?" So both of them are leaving. So nobody sees where they're going. We don't know what happens. Cyborg and Nightwing finish their conversation, and Nightwing leaves, and he finds Red X downloading information onto this cute little Red X flash drive. I love the details.
Branding.
Exactly. They end up having a little fight, and he's trying to get away. And we see that Alita is grabbing her blades. And it's this whole chase scene, and Donna Troy's like, "Oh, okay, you're gonna hit the ground, Nightwing, oh god." And then he ends up almost hitting the ground, but Alita saves him, and Red X deceived them by just throwing his cape, and he was able to get away by jumping off the roof, and I don't even know where he went.
Distraction.
Exactly.
Off the roof.
And so we then find out that Nightwing's like, "All right, no more of this fucking around shit. Get all the students in. It's got to be one of them." And we then get a second cut of Alita on the phone talking to somebody.
I believe I know who it is, but we'll get to that after the end.
Yes, and so it's a little confusing. You're like, what's going on here? Like, basically he's telling her, like, "Oh, you didn't complete the job," or anything like that, and she's like, "You don't owe me." And then we cut to I always say cut. I don't know how to describe it. We go to the...
No, yeah, we cut.
Yeah.
We're cutting to the next scene.
Okay. And then we cut to the two people, or the person that was on the phone, and he's in the room with somebody else. And they're basically...
Yes.
They're basically like... They're like, you can't handle this? And he's like, "Shut up. Let me just have the file, and I'll take care of this." And then we find out that the Titans are talking. They're like, "Okay, we got to address them. Tell them that we think... that we know who it is and that we need them to fess up." And they're like, "Oh, but what about lying? What if that causes more trouble?" And Nightwing's like, "I don't give a fuck. I'm mad. Somebody took my mask." And we get this weird interaction between Alita and Matt being like, "Hey, like, what did you do? Oh, what do you mean? Oh, where were you? Oh, I don't know anything about this." And it's kind of weird. And Alita ends up deleting this contact name with the initials AW. And then we cut. The final ending is where we left off at the first page, and she's like, "Well, are you gonna do it or not?" And he's like, "I'm not gonna kill you, but they might." And you hear somebody else, you see a bubble from somewhere else, and it's like, "Not if you come quietly." And we then find out, the Suicide Squad, is that what it's supposed to be?
Yep.
And
you got Peacekeeper, Superboy, and one of the Talons from the Court of Owls.
And you're like, what? Because I was not expecting that. And the last thing I will say before going over this is, Joe, there's a lot of name drops in this. A lot.
Yes. There's a lot of name drops. Okay, so first going back to AW. So you've been in comics for a very short amount of time, Joe. So I understand that you wouldn't be able, you wouldn't pick up on this. But me, being the comic book genius that I am, knew immediately that she was contacting the head of AW Root Beer. And so because of this, we can connect these two.
Oh, that was good. That was real. That was...
I don't know why you think this is a bit. I am quite serious, Joe. No, so... And everyone knows the head of AW Root Beer is Amanda Waller, a.k.a. the one who put together Task Force X, a.k.a. the Suicide Squad. So, I believe Alita, or Bolt, Alita... I don't know why I find Alita so hard to say.
Just call her Bolt.
Bolt, yeah. I believe Bolt... and I'm just thinking of the fucking animated dog movie. Anyway... Bolt is probably part of, or at least tangentially related to, the Suicide Squad in some way, and it seems like the people, Peacekeeper, Superboy, and Talon have come there to either take her back or kill her. I mean, obviously it's probably either, but because they're the fucking Suicide Squad. But I find it funny that Superboy is in there because if you remember back during the home ec sequence, also by the way, a wonderful example of how to use repeating panel sequences for the conversation stuff. It's great, but when they're talking, they're comparing Matt to Connor, and so
Yes,
I
I
was
wrote
just
that
like,
down.
yes, I figured you would because me as well. I looked at that and I was like, Connor, the fuck is Connor? So I gave it a quick Google because I was like, all right, if I just Google Connor and Teen Titans, I'll probably remember who this is. And sure enough, Superboy comes up and I'm like, ah, yes, Connor Kent is the clone Superboy made by Lex Luthor. So they said he reminds them of him, which it's pretty obvious because, again, we don't know exactly what Matt's powers are, but I'm assuming they're akin to Superboy's powers, considering that he's incredibly strong and he doesn't really need to practice his like strength. He just wants to sharpen his mind some more, which, that's interesting. I'm curious as to see. He doesn't seem like a malicious or like a douchey character. He kind of just seems a little bit antisocial to me. That's the way he kind of came off. So I'm curious to see if he's actually going to grow into being a hero, or if perhaps he's actually. I feel like it's too easy that he's Red X. But I don't know.
Well,
so.
that was the thing. At the first, I'm like, wow, are they really just gonna like full on like hint, but kind of make it obvious that he's Red X? But then,
Yeah.
after the scene of you see him, like they're hinting that Alita and him have something going on, that they have some other background. But at first they make it seem like, yes, we're hinting that he's Red X, but then later on in the story you're like, wait a minute, like maybe it's not that clear.
Yeah, because they did the same thing in the previous issue with red hair hotshot guy. What the fuck was his
Oh
name?
my goodness, yes, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but they do the same thing with him where they give heavy implication that he might be Red X. So I wouldn't be surprised if in each issue they give you implications as to, like, okay, now we're focused on this character and make them seem shady, like they might be connected to Red X or be Red X, that sort of way. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go a lot of issues giving evidence for a lot of different characters. So I don't know. I'm intrigued though. I don't know who it could be.
The last name that maybe you picked up on it is in that little scene where Alita's on the phone and she says, "You don't owe me." If this is Amanda Waller, it says, "Barely. You're not going soft, are you, Smith?" Any clue who Smith is?
This is who presumably Amanda Waller's talking
Yes,
to,
he's
right?
he's the
man that
guy
is
we
sitting
can.
across.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I did not look into that because I thought that guy might show up later on in the issue, like at the end. Actually, Smith. What's Peacekeeper's real name? Just out of curiosity. Peacekeeper's real name. For Honor Wiki. I don't know. Nope. Let's go with Peacekeeper name. DC Comics. Let's just take it. Christopher Smith. Peacekeeper's real name, Christopher Smith. So I'm assuming she's talking to Peacekeeper, and then Peacekeeper goes in and does the thing. Yeah, that would make the most sense.
That was a very good connection. That was good.
Thank you. I just used logistics and logic and reasoning, not logistics.
And the last thing I want to say is, is Matt Price a new character, or is that a name that has existed before?
Good question. Easiest way to figure that out. Matt Price, DC Comics.
You're using Bing, right?
Oh, of course, only Bing. Ooh. Fictional character, Brain Boy, was Matt Price. Interesting. So it might be some guy called Brain Boy. That's a Wikipedia thing. Superhero fandom's Brain Boy. So it seems like Matt Price has been a character in the past, but it looks like it's like a new iteration of him. So, yeah. Teen Titans just introduced DC's new Superboy by ScreenRant.com. Get the fuck out of here, you clickbait bullshit. But yeah, so it seems like his alias is Brain Boy, and he's been around before, but it seems like an almost rebooted interpretation of him.
Okay. Okay. And okay, so that thank you for that clarification. And the other thing I wanted to say is next issue's name or the title of the next issue is Task Force X.
Yes.
So this is I was not expecting the Suicide Squad tie-in.
Well, there's a movie coming out, Joe. You got to get that branding going.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I don't know if this was like intentional, as in like the writer always wanted Suicide Squad in it, or if it was like, hey, Suicide Squad's coming out. Why don't you put them in your comic? But I don't know. If it's good, I don't care. I guess we'll see.
Joe, can you give me 1 second? I think something just fell from the roof. I just saw something fall out my window. Let me just get up and take a look what the hell that just was.
Okay. So he's gotten up and he's going over to take a look.
I figured out what it was. Someone, there was this whole thing where like somebody was down outside of the building, and then they were talking to somebody at like the top, and they're like, "Throw me this thing down." They threw down a bag, but like I saw it at the peripheral vision of just something fly down my window, and I was like, what?"
Just hear it go barking. Woof, woof, woof. Oh, what the fuck?
I was,
Is that a dog?
I was a little concerned for a second. Okay, we're good. We're good.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you have to say on Teen Titans Academy Numero Dos?
It's good. Art is great as always. I want more. This is good. I enjoy reading this.
Yee. All right, now moving on to Batman Black and White number 5.
Okay.
We have.
Oh boy.
That sounded like an interesting. Okay, I feel like we might have similar feelings on this issue.
This is the most confusing one.
Fuck yeah.
I'm so lost on this.
Okay. We'll try and get through this quickly. So we'll lightning round. I love doing lightning rounds with this shit because it's five books in one. For anyone who doesn't know, Batman Black and White. It's each issue has 5 short stories, sort of a thing. So, all right, let's start with the first one: A Father and Son Outing by Jorge Jimenez, both writing and art. What'd you think of this one, Joe?
Good. I enjoyed it. Funny. I like the ending. Simple. Good art. Absolutely have nothing bad to say.
Okay. Yeah, I'm similar. I don't think it's incredible. I like Jorge Jimenez's art a lot, as I've stated before, with his like standard Batman stuff. I think his work works better with color. The black and white stuff, it still looks pretty cool, but I don't know. There's some of it that I'm just sort of like, okay. And he has an obsession with doing the image of Batman like flying in shadow and then writing "because I'm Batman" within that silhouette. Like he's done it before in the Batman book as well, and now he's doing it in this. And I'm just like, it doesn't work for me in either. Like it's a very cheesy line, especially in the context of everything going on. But whatever. It's a story mostly about him and Damian, obviously father and son, that sort of a thing. But yeah, I'm just it's fine. It's okay. Like I don't know. I give it a 6 out of 10. All right, moving on. Signals round, lightning round, Joe.
Okay. This next one is this Batman Year One? Like
That's Joe. My only notes for this: Year 1 Batman look, comma, IDK what the story is.
yeah, Year One question mark, old guy question mark. What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know what any of this is.
Is the fact that he's calling him Jimmy? Is this the cop from Year One, the dude who was like a bad cop? Flass.
Oh shit!
Is it? I think
Flass.
because look at the photo on the wall too. That's how I thought of it. I'm like, I had to actually get Year One out. I'm like, what's his name? I'm like,
yeah,
is this supposed to be Flass? Like, I don't know. I have no clue.
Okay, yeah, because I looked at it. I thought it might have been someone like that as well, but then also, how many? He says it's been 30 years since that night. Like he says that multiple times in this issue. Batman doesn't look like he's 60, so
Nope.
I have a hard time believing that. Gordon doesn't look like he's like insanely old either. So if it was 30 years, I guess it would make sense for Flash to look that old. But also,
No.
Flash.
That doesn't make sense. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. The timeline wouldn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
I have no clue. Yeah, literally no idea. I hit the mic. Oh my god, that makes two of
No,
us
you hit the
tonight.
mic out of frustration.
Okay.
Yeah, It looks. I will say this though, the art. It's by Lee Weeks, so he's the guy who did the cover as well. Art looks pretty good.
I
It's a
like it.
solid.
It's
It's
fun.
like very close to year one. Yeah. But the story, man, I I don't fucking know.
Yeah, the art is really similar to year one. I had to double check that it wasn't the same artist.
Yeah, that's Mazzucchelli on year one, and then Lee Weeks on this one. So I'm assuming he's doing it in the style of it. But yeah, I'm giving this like a 7, 8 out of 10 for art, and then story a fucking 2. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
All right, next one, Blue Lightning Round, Joe.
What is happening? um,
Yeah.
there's a guy who has electric powers. And then only two notes I have are electric question mark. So confused. I don't know, Joe.
Hashtag not clickbait. Hashtag pregnant question mark exclamation point. Yeah, so let me break this down because I read this twice because I was so fucking confused.
I
was like,
read
what
it
the hell
twice
is going
too,
on?
and I was still lost.
I thought Electric Powers guy was Harvey Dent for a second, and that instead of him becoming Two-Face, he became like Static Shock or some shit. No. So we cut between present day, where there's a blonde waitress, or there's a blonde bartender dealing with a couple of guys in a bar, and then we flash back to a wedding between Hilda. It's Hilda, right? Is Harvey's wife's name?
Yes, I believe.
I'm pretty sure it is, because I'm thinking Long Halloween as well as where she's around. So you got Hilda, who's marrying Harvey, and then it's basically her just talking about how it's like, oh, I should have seen from the entire time, how much of an asshole he was.
It's Gilda.
Gilda, that's what it is. Okay, I just went one too many in the alphabet for the first letter. A B C D E F G H. Yeah, okay, I said that right. No, I went one before. I said Gilda. It doesn't matter.
College education, everybody.
Thank you. I didn't go to school for spelling. So Gilda is like getting married to Harvey, and she's all like, "Oh, I guess he was always a monster," sort of a thing. And then you see like the origin of Harvey Dent, and then like she runs into the hospital, and Batman is all like, "No, you don't want to see him right now." And she's like, "Get the fuck away! I want to see my husband." And she sees him, and he's a fucking half-burned lunatic now. And then we cut back to the bar. As like, because there's like very little dialogue in this, it's just her running narration, and you see this guy all of a sudden shoot electricity out of his hand and like attack one of the guys inside the bar, and then he walks out of the bar, and then the bartender follows out, but you only realize it's the bartender because the electric power guy turns around and he's like, "Wait, you're the bartender!" And you see her stuffing the blonde wig, or presumably blonde because it's white instead of like the black of like normal black and brown hair, and she's stuffing it into her purse, and she just points a gun at him and then shoots him and kills him and then walks away. And I'm like, okay, like to me this makes a little sense because of another story that I read that I don't want to spoil because of you might read this at some point because it's a very good story, so I won't even talk about it like what it is because I don't want implications. But it was confusing and weird, and the only redeeming quality about this was that the art kind of looked like Mark Bagley's art and Spider-Man stuff, and I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah. And then I liked how I don't even get it, but like it was kind of cool how they had the something old, something borrowed, something new, and something blue. I was like, well, I don't even know.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what the connection was with that, and I don't have an English major brain. I don't know.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Lightning round, Joe. The riddle. Next one.
Oh my god. What the fuck? What sick fuck thinks this is going to be enjoyable? Like, this is one of those things where you make this and you're like, you point your fingers, you're like, you're just not educated enough to understand it and enjoy it. No. This is literally, I guess, a cool idea, but no, it's not. It is not.
I hate it.
It is so. Did you actually go through and try and follow this, or did you just read it through? Because I just read it through.
I just read it through. I tried for a second. So this next one is called The Riddle. It is a fucking choose your own adventure comic book. It sounds cool in practice. It's not cool in practice because in a comic book, you can see panels before, like you can see all the panels on a page. And so it's just annoying more than anything else, where it was like I would read a panel And then because there's no fucking flow to this comic book, it's just like, oh, okay, so if you choose this, go to this panel. But if you choose to do this, go to the other panel on like 3 pages away from this. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I just read it through and I try to connect it in my head, and it's nothing. Like there's nothing. It's not a story. It's just a
gimmick.
Game,
It's a gimmick.
Yeah. And it pains me so much because the art in this one is really good too. Like the art in this issue, I think looks awesome. It's like really very clean, Ben Day or half-toned. I can't remember what the difference is. One of those kinds of dots all over the place.
Stippling.
Really good use. It's not stippling because it's like
It's
screen tone applied sort of a thing. But yeah, it's half-tones or Ben Day dots, and I can't remember which one is a camera and different sized, and which one is the like the comic book shit, but whatever. But yeah, the art in this is really cool to look at. So like, what I would recommend, just when you get to the riddle, if you're reading this, just look at the panels and like put your own story together in your head, because I think that'd be an awesome storytelling exercise, having to fucking link together all these panels. And then yeah, that's what you do. Don't fucking read this one. It doesn't matter.
Okay. Okay, now we move to the best one.
Yes.
This thing was fucking good. This was my favorite. Fucking Nightwing, man. Hell yeah. I like this a lot.
Yeah, it's called The Man Who Flies, for anyone keeping count.
So this starts off, this is all, I don't think there's any dialogue. It's all just narration, by Nightwing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say about it, because it's not really a story. It's just Nightwing's stream of consciousness talking about, I guess, his origin. Would you say that?
Yeah, it's just kind of his life and like what he's dealt with up to this point.
Yeah, so we get a nice scene of Batman and him, I get meditating in front of the fireplace, and kind of seeing him grow up into the Nightwing he is now. He's doing some acrobatics, making the jump. We get some cool Polaroid photos of him and the Bat family, pictures of him with his with the Graysons, his girlfriends, and we get some Teen Titans stuff with Slade in there, Deathstroke, some of the villains. There's not like a clear story, but I guess there is at the end when he ends up saving a boy that was he was in a house where a murder suicide took place, and he like protects him. He's like, "Hey, I'm here. You don't got nothing to worry about." And I don't know. It's I was just so relieved to actually read this and be like, "Wow, that was enjoyable."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a bit of a night in the life of Nightwing, but it's more so what I see as just a celebration of Nightwing's history.
That's a good
and,
way
like,
to
where
put
he's
it.
going. Yeah. It talks about like what he was like as Robin, what he was like on the Teen Titans, what he was like when he became Nightwing, what he was like when he had to take up the Batman mantle for a brief period of time, and then he saves a kid. So it's just a nice little appreciation issue for Nightwing and like all of his history and that sort of stuff. So it is, I think, the best issue. So even though like I appreciate that it was a bit of Nightwing appreciation, I appreciate that. But the story, it's like, again, there really wasn't a story. So I gotta say, for Batman Black and White #5, stories across the board, like 3 out of 10, very meta bad. Art, I think this is the best art across the fucking board. And that pisses me off that there's such great art attached to such bland, stupid stories.
I will say, yeah. I don't know. I would have to go back and look over it. I will say the Jimenez art and this last one by Jamal Campbell. I loved.
Same guy who does
Oh
First
my
Sector.
goodness, the way that freaking Nightwing looks. Everybody looks in the Nightwing story. I think is awesome. So that was my favorite art. I actually like that more than the Jimenez art. But
they're both really, really talented artists. I love both of their work.
yeah. This is just a really confusing book. I don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this will be a nice one to like this will be the one that's most fun to go back and flip through, because you'll just be able to go like, oh yeah, look how cool that one was. Oh yeah, look at that awesome panel of like Nightwing flying through the air. Sick. Awesome. That awesome panel of Batman flying in silhouetted with the "because I'm Batman" written into him. Awesome. Don't have to worry about weird like feelings about that because it's like doesn't mesh with the story tone or anything like that. Fine, it's great. So like this is the one that I'll be like, yeah, go back and flip through Batman Black and White #5. The stories though, pass.
Big time. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So now that we've gotten that Debbie Downer out of the way, this upcoming week, you got anything that you're picking up?
Only if Blade Runner Origins #3 comes in, baby.
Yep. Gotta keep your fingers crossed for that one. And then me, whatchamacallit, I'm picking up next issue of Batman, some more Jimenez art on the way for me there. Whatchamacallit, Nocterra #3, I believe, is coming out, and then Swamp Thing #3 as well is coming out. So I've got 3 issues of stuff that I'm quite excited for.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully next week I'll have at least something to talk about with all those that you have.
Yeah, that'd be nice. If anything, I don't know. Maybe you can just guess what the the next issue of Blade Runner will be like, just like we did with the one of the past episodes.
Exactly.
Okay, everyone, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that wonderful, beautiful stuff. Go out, buy a comic every once in a while. Read it. They're fun. They're enjoyable. Art is cool. Yeah, and with that, everyone, I love you, I'll leave you, and I shall say goodbye.